Hello there, and thanks for joining me once again. So this video is the second half of where I go and edit a few images from Senja on my trip last year. So if you've seen the first half of the video, you'll remember that I picked out 4 images that I previously didn't bother doing anything with, and thought now we're kind of stuck indoors for a lot of the time, it would be worth revisiting those for a little bit of an editing session to see what we can come out with. So without further ado, hop over into Lightroom and take a look at the images I'm going to work with this time. Okay, so you'll see here the images that we worked with before, and I'll drop a link up to the earlier video if you haven't seen that yet. And today I'm going to work with these two. So this one was taken at the sort of end of one of the fjords, looking down towards the, I believe sort of Devil's Teeth is the common name for these mountains, and they're kind of lovely and jagged along here, although there was some low cloud obscuring that. But I liked the image anyway, mainly because the sun was sort of picking up the underneath of the cloud here, because it was actually sort of clear on the horizon there. So this isn't a bad image to start with, but it needs a bit of work. I don't know that we need so much cloud above, but it does look like there's some colour in there we could try and pull out. There's a horrible dust spot. This little rock is distracting, so we'll see what we can do. The other image I took was actually of looking back at the same mountains. So this is the road that sort of leads round, and as you go right around at the end there, that goes off to the end of the ford where the first image was taken. It's slightly overexposed, that's not a problem. If we look at the histogram, it's not burnt out, but it would be nice to try and get a bit more detail and drama back into this. But the main reason I didn't do anything with this image before is because of all the distractions. So we've got these sort of red poles that they have for the winter, so you can see where the edge of the road is if it's snowed. There's this sort of telegraph wire which is a bit messy, and down here we've actually got, you know, roadworks and a bit of a car there. And it's not the sharpest image because I sort of didn't use a huge depth of field to focus on the mountains there. I took this with quite a long lens, so down here we're actually fairly soft. But I don't think that particularly matters. You know, all the interesting part is over in the distance there. So yeah, we'll see what we can do with this picture as well. So yeah, I guess hop back to the first one, the seascape, and have a play. So, first thing with this image, standard workflow is change this to landscape. One day I will actually set that to be the default on import. The other thing I want to do is just get rid of this dust spot for now because it's really annoying me. The tool within Lightroom does a reasonable job at getting rid of those. And you can drag it around a little bit, just sort of pick where it takes the information from. I have it set onto heal, which I think just does a bit of a better job of sort of blending into the surrounding area. So there we go. We wouldn't even know that had happened. I think the horizon is slightly on the squiff. So if we just bring up the crop tool, click outside, and we can rotate slightly, just level that off. There we go. So this rock down the bottom, I'm not particularly into. It's nowhere near big enough to make a useful foreground interest. It's just, you know, my eye keeps going down there wondering what that is. So I think the next thing to do is probably just to crop in a little way, just to get rid of that. We've already got a sort of cleaner image there. So the next thing I want to do is see if I can just make this sky a bit more dramatic. Pull out a bit of detail in the landscape. I like the light here on the rocks, but this shadow area is not so interesting. So I'm just going to hit auto and just see what that does. It actually makes a pretty minimal change on this image. The other thing I want to do is play around with the white balance, because we've got some nice warmth here, but then it's quite cool and grey up at the top. And I'm just thinking, if we pick a daylight white balance, that cools it down. If we pick cloudy, it's a little bit warmer. I think that's nearer to how it was as shot, perhaps. very close. I'm going to leave that for a minute. The next thing I want to do is just to try darkening the top of the image to see what that does. I'm just going to pull down a fairly big soft grad filter there. Just reset that. I want to basically enhance the kind of stormy feel of this image. So let's turn up the clarity a little bit as well. And I find that dehaze sometimes does a nice job on clouds and sometimes makes them look awful. So let's crank that up as well. Obviously that's just ridiculous. I think maybe just a little bit on there. I'll just pull this down a bit more. Okay, the next thing I want to do is take a brush and use the clarity on it just to try and bring out a little bit of detail and lightness on this this mountainside here. So again, I'll just crank up that as a starting point and just kind of paint over here when it wakes up. There we go. Okay, add a little bit of texture, line the shadows a little bit. There we go. I'm just going to try a slightly more panoramic crop, because although I like the detail in the sky up here, I don't know that we need all of it. I'm wondering what a kind of 16:9 sort of widescreen format would look like. The advantage there is we can also bring back some of the width as well from where we cropped earlier. Okay, I quite like that. That would make quite a nice wallpaper, I think. I may just brush over the sky here just to see if I can bring out a little bit more detail as well. I do like a dramatic sky. I'm also just wondering what would happen if we made the overall image warmer, so try and sort of enhance that sunset feel. I think it may start to look a bit unnatural, but we can crank that right up. Add a bit of purple because it looks a bit too green. Maybe ease that back a little. Maybe about there. That's quite nice. So what do you think? I think that's an okay image in the end. Like I say, I really like the light that was just hitting the mountain here. I mean, that's why I took the image when I was there. But I think just losing those distractions off the bottom and getting rid of some of the sky across the top helps it. So I think that was a fairly simple edit. So I think I'll leave that one at this point and move across to the second image, which I think is going to be slightly more involved. So for this second image, I think we'll do a couple of simple edits to the exposure to begin with, and then I'm going to pop it over into Photoshop to clear up some of those distractions that I mentioned earlier. So as before, I'll just flick it over to landscape and hit auto, which is probably going to darken us down a little bit. That's already brought some nice detail back into the sky there. White balance, I'll choose daylight. A little bit warm, but then it was taken late in the afternoon, so I guess that's probably okay, but I don't know. I may play with that a little bit more later on. And again, I might just sort of add a grad filter just to darken that sky at the top of the image down a little bit. Add a little bit of contrast. Slight bit of dehaze. Bit of clarity. And I think at that point I'm now going to move this over into Photoshop to start clearing up. So I could use the spot removal tool in Lightroom, and it's okay for getting rid of spots, but for getting rid of more complicated stuff it doesn't really do a good job. I'm not sure how well Photoshop's going to get rid of all of this stuff, but I guess we'll have a look and put the healing tool to the test, as it were. Okay, so here we are in good old Photoshop, and there's quite a bit to remove. So I'll start doing it, but then I'll probably stop talking and speed the video up, because watching me do all of this is going to be pretty boring. But we have a few areas to get rid of, really. So we just sort of move along to the top of here. And the first thing I'm sort of curious about is how well it's going to get rid of these wires across the image. So we can make the brush size fairly small. I tend to keep a fairly hard brush when using this tool, because otherwise you get a sort of slightly softer than you would expect edge to it, which doesn't look quite right. But as you can see, just drawing along there actually does a pretty good job. So I'll just move right to the end of here. So I think that's going to work. The other area that we'll need to get rid of, and that's going to be a bit more challenging in the trees probably, but we'll see. I also wanted to get rid of this car and these sort of red poles. So for the red poles, I just need to go a little bit larger because they're slightly fatter. And again, we just draw over it. And again, I think we're helped that the landscape sort of around here is so soft and rough with all the leaves and bushes and grass. We've got plenty of texture for the tool to find, to fill in. So I think, is there one near the edge of the image? No, I think there is on the other side. But I think we'll be okay doing this here. I mean, you don't need to be super detailed. It's done a little bit of a weird colour there. That's better. So I think that's going to work okay. The bit that I'm then sort of curious about is these sort of traffic roadwork warnings. These roadworks were annoying. There's actually a really nice viewpoint further down, just on the sort of headland. And you couldn't really get to it because it was blocked off for them rebuilding the viewing platform, which was quite annoying. So I couldn't get a pretty picture from there. But wow, that did a pretty good job. Okay, that's better than I was expecting. And do the same on this side. Get rid of the little pole there, this little bit of sign. And then same on this one. Just draw over it. Okay, and then we're going to get rid of this car, which is not quite so convincing, but then we're looking sort of quite zoomed in here. If I was to zoom back out to the original size, you would never know. So yeah, that's doing a pretty good job. So I've got the rest of the image to clean up. So I won't make you sit and watch that at standard speed. I'll let you watch the sped up version. One thing I will say, some people sort of don't like this kind of editing. They think it's, you should photograph what was there, and I get that. I mean, the roadworks, I don't have any qualms about getting rid of, because at the end of the day, that's just unlucky timing when I visited. I'm unlikely to go back there in the near future. I'd like to go back there at some point in the future, but that was just sort of unlucky. So I don't really feel too bad about getting rid of those, because if I was there, 3 weeks later, they'd probably be gone. These red poles, I mean, they're not there all year as far as I'm aware, but they're there as soon as there's a chance of snow. You could argue they're part of that landscape. I think that's fine. Just personally, I don't like them in the image. And the telegraph wire across the top, I mean, that's there all the time. What I should have done is really take the picture from further down the road, so it wasn't there at all. But this is what I've got to work with. I'm not particularly into things like replacing skies. Some people are happy to replace the sky in an image with one that's much more dramatic. At the end of the day, if I end up with a plain blue sky to work with, I don't like it, but I'll keep it. I'll do what I can do to get the best out of it. But yeah, interesting to know your thoughts on what kind of editing is acceptable and what isn't really. Feel free to comment down below. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to finish clearing up this image now. Okay, so that's the image cleaned up, and as you can see, the heal tool did a pretty good job, and it only took kind of 5 minutes to do. So yeah, pretty impressive overall. So what else to do with this image? So I like to try and keep a consistent feel with some of the other images I processed from this trip. So part of what I did was use the colour effects tool and one or two of the filters in there, such as the cross processing and so on. So I'm just going to load the image up into there and make a few adjustments. Okay, so back in Photoshop, zoom in, find those dust blobs that were up in the sky. There's one or two in the clouds here as well. So just make the healing tool about the right size, and again, just like we got rid of the telegraph wires and red poles and things, we can do the same kind of thing. Just paint over those, really quick and easy. Lightroom would probably get rid of these okay as well, but while I'm in Photoshop I may as well. Are there any more obvious ones? Not seeing any. So I think at this point I'll take the image just back into Lightroom. Right, here we are back in Lightroom then. So we can do a quick comparison, obviously. That's the original image we started with, albeit with a few adjustments. So if I reset that all together, that's what we originally started with. And then we've ended up with this, which is a little bit more interesting. I think what we didn't really see here is the sort of tips of the mountains poking through the rock, and we'd lost the detail of the sky up here. The grass is a little bit washed out, and obviously we have all these distractions. So this one is maybe a little bit dark. I might just bring the shadows back up a bit, and the overall exposure just a smidge. Not that much, just that. I think that's probably enough. But yeah, I think that looks quite nice. These clouds up here are kind of okay, but they're also a little bit distracting. I don't know, again, whether a 16:9 crop would work if we just sort of don't lose the top of the mountain there. Something like that. Maybe. Yeah, I think I prefer that as well. Don't know. What do you think? But anyway, that's the last two images edited. So that one, which looks awful. I just need to zoom in to get rid of the JPEG blockiness. Since I upgraded Lightroom last, it seems to not always load an image properly until you zoom in on it, which is kind of weird. But anyway, so that one, yeah, I like the drama in the sky. I like the colour. This one, it's still not the best image, but I think it's certainly enhanced over the original. So yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you maybe spotted one or two ideas for when you edit your own images. By all means, let me know in the comments if you'd have done things differently. I'm sure you would. I'm not saying this is the right way of doing it. There's 1,000,001 ways to process an image. And yeah, otherwise, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. And I guess I'll see you again soon.